In this lesson, we're going to study, practice and learn 15 words that students of English very often mispronounce. This lesson will be especially useful if you are a pre-intermediate, intermediate or an upper intermediate student of English. But even if you are an advanced or a proficiency learner, you should check that you know how to say the words in the video. As always, we're going to practice these words first on their own, and I'll be giving you lots of tips and tricks in terms of how they should be pronounced. We are then going to use them in sentences because it's really important to practice pronunciation in a broader context, and building on that, we're going to put these words into a little story at the end of the video. So, without further ado, let's deal with our first word. And this is a really tricky word for a lot of learners of English. The problem in general that students have with this word is how to pronounce the letter I inside that word. How would you do it? Listen and check. Environment. Environment. So, how was the letter I pronounced? It was, surprisingly, pronounced as I. Environment. Now, as you can see in the phonetic transcription here, we should theoretically pronounce the letter N inside environment. But do native speakers actually do that? Why don't we check? Let's have a look at a few video clips of native speakers saying the word environment. What I'd like you to be paying attention to is whether they say the letter N in this word, whether they say N in environment or not. Let's listen and check.
Pollutes the environment and separates us from other people.
In this environment today, we've got to think of it all as one piece.
The anxiety that we're seeing in the political environment. So
did you hear N inside environment or not? I didn't, personally. And it's because most native speakers pronounce this word as environment. Environment. So whether you decide to pronounce it personally as environment or environment, without the N, is up to you. Just remember about that I sound inside. Now, the next word we're going to study today is this verb. It's a lovely verb, but again, the problem here is the letter I. So how would you pronounce this verb? Listen and check. Admire. Admire. What did you hear? It was the I sound again. And of course, the letter I can be pronounced in various ways in English, but in here, and in the word environment, it's pronounced as the I, exactly as the letter I in the English alphabet. Admire. The verb forms of this word are going to retain this pronunciation. So you're going to say admired in the past and admiring. Now, in case you were wondering about why I wasn't pronouncing the letter R at the end of admire, my accent is British, so in situations like these, British speakers don't pronounce the letter R. But there's absolutely no problem, and you can say it. Just make sure that you say it as the soft R sound, not the R with your tongue hitting the roof of your mouth, not the R. Admire. Admire. Let's move on to the next word. And this one is an interesting one. My question here is, how do you pronounce the last two letters here? EW is quite a confusing ending in English because there are some words where these two letters are not pronounced as U. You see, this is what happens with the majority of students saying this word. They want to say these two letters as U, but it's not like that. Listen, crew. Crew. Can you hear what sound there is at the end? It's oo, a long oo, crew. There are some similar words in English that follow the same pattern. So for example, we're going to say grew, the past of grow, threw, the past of throw, or flew, the past of fly. So, crew, grew, threw, flew. Just remember about that long oo. And now, let's move on to the next word. Now, I really like this one because if you say it correctly, you sound like a true native speaker. So what's the problem here? Well, the vast majority of students will pronounce the last two letters in this word the way they see them. But guess what? They are not pronounced like this. Listen. Minus. Minus. What did you hear at the end? It wasn't an oo, right? It was us. Us. Very, very similar to how we say the letter S in the British alphabet. Minus. Minus. It's a really, really short ending. And it's pronounced this way because there is no emphasis, no stress on this ending in this word. And generally speaking, endings that are not stressed in English are pronounced in this very, very short way. So for example, words like circus, bonus, or focus are all going to be pronounced in exactly the same way at the end as the word minus. So just S, very, very short. So will it be a problem if you don't say it like that in a conversation? No, because people will definitely understand you. But if you say minus, you're going to sound very, very natural. Let's move on to the next word. Now this is a great verb, and we're going to learn another little pronunciation hack studying it. So how would you say it? In particular, how would you pronounce the letters IR inside this word? Well, listen. Confirm. Confirm. How was the I pronounced? It was a long air, right? Confirm. You can say it pronouncing the R inside and say confirm in international pronunciation. There's absolutely no problem. But whatever you do, that letter I is going to be pronounced as air. This is a universal rule you can apply to any word where the letter I is followed by R and another consonant in a stressed syllable. That's quite a few rules there. Let me repeat that. Whenever the letters IR are followed by another consonant in English, and we put stress on that syllable where they are, the letter I is always going to be pronounced as a long air. So for example, we'll say first, 30, or firm. The long air sound. This is of course going to be the same in the verb forms that come from confirm. So we're going to say confirming or confirmed. Also, pay attention that in this word there is a lot of stress on the second syllable. And do you remember what we said about those syllables that don't receive stress in English? They're really, really short, right? So listen to how I say this first syllable. Confirm. Confirm. Can you hear how quick, how fast this first syllable is? It's kn. Practice that because it'll make you sound very, very natural in English. Just imagine that this O between C and N doesn't exist. It's not there. Confirm. And then the whole pronunciation is just beautiful. Confirm. Next one. This is a word that's tricky because, surprise, surprise, learners of English don't know how to pronounce the letter I inside. And how do we say it? Well, in exactly the same way as we said it in environment and admire. So, how would you say it? Private. That's right, with a nice I inside. Now, an interesting thing about private is that when we look at the noun that comes from private, we have two possibilities. We can either say privacy or privacy. Completely up to you. You have flexibility, full flexibility in terms of how to say this word. So privacy, privacy. But when it comes to the adjective, there's only one way of pronouncing it, and that's private. Let's move on to the next word. And this next one is quite tricky. Lots of learners don't know how to pronounce it. It's quite a long word. So let me help you, and let me delete these first 4 letters there. So how would you say what's left? Listen. Sphere. Sphere. We start by saying s and f together, a little bit difficult, sf, and then we add the word ear. Sphere. Sphere. This is exactly how you need to say the ending in atmosphere. Atmosphere. The problem with atmosphere is the stress. Did you hear where atmosphere is stressed? It's the first syllable, isn't it? Atmosphere. A really, really difficult word to say, but a really useful one too. Atmosphere. Let's move on to the next one. And in here, we're going to learn another pronunciation hack. So how do you say it? In particular, I want you to think about how you would say the last 3 letters in this word. Listen and check. Average. 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 What can you hear at the end? I'm not saying age or age, right? Average. Age. These last 3 letters are pronounced in exactly the same way as the word bridge. So, age, average. You can apply this pronunciation pattern to almost any English word that ends in age. There are some words that are an exception to this rule, usually words that come from French, like camouflage or mirage, but in general, in English, 99% of words that end in age are going to be pronounced as age. So, average, and how would you say this one now? Now you know, right, how to say those last 3 letters. So, advantage, advantage, and also disadvantage, disadvantage, advantages and disadvantages. Well done. Let's move on to the next word. Now, this one is an extremely difficult word, and I probably won't be wrong if I say that 99% of students don't really pronounce it well. And no wonder, because it's really, really hard. So, again, let me help you and let's split it. Let's start with the beginning. How do you say this word? It's not so difficult, right? Value. Good. Value. This is how you need to start the adjective, by saying value. Now, the big question is, how do you say the last 4 letters in this word? It's a big problem, right? Because students in general see able, and naturally you want to say able. But guess what? In English, when you see able at the end of an adjective, you never say able. Never. It's very confusing if you do that. How do you say those 4 letters then? Listen. A bull. A ball. I know it's a little bit hard to believe and hard to say, but these 4 letters are pronounced as just one syllable, which starts with a very, very short vowel sound, and then you say b and l together, trying not to put any vowel in between. Bull. So, valuable, valuable, valuable. Try to practice and really learn this word because it's going to be a very valuable addition to your pronunciation. Let's move on to the next word now. And guess what? There is a problem with the letter I here. Lots of students don't know how to say it. So how would you say it? Will it surprise you that it's pronounced in exactly the same way as the I in environment, admire, and private? How do you say this? Scientific. Now that I is not the only problem here, of course, because the letter C is completely silent here. This is a general rule you can apply to any word in English that starts with SCI. Sci. Scientific. This is why we say science, scientist, scientific. And let's move on to the next word now. And the next one is a regular verb. And students have two principal problems with this word. The first one is the pronunciation of the ed ending, and the other one is where to emphasize this word, where to put the stress. Let's deal with the first problem first. So, how is the ed pronounced here? It's pronounced as d, without adding any extra syllables. This is important because if you added an extra syllable here, you would say perform it. In other words, you would be telling me to perform something for you. In here, we don't add any extra syllables, so we just add the d to the infinitive. Perform, d. Performed. Performed. Remember that. And now, did you hear where I put the stress inside this word? Listen again. Performed. There is very, very strong stress on the second syllable, and this first syllable there sounds very, very short. Performed. You can say the R's, of course, and say performed, performed, but whatever you do, this first syllable is going to be very, very short, and you're not going to add any extra syllables with the ed ending. Performed. I hope you have performed this task beautifully. And now let's move on to our next word. Now this is a really serious one, isn't it? How would you say it? In particular, I'm interested in how you would pronounce the AU at the beginning of this word. How would you do it? Listen and check. Authorities. Authorities. What can you hear at the beginning? Authorities. It's the long O sound, right? Lots of students are having problems here because they want to pronounce the letters AU at the beginning and in the middle of words as OW or O. But this doesn't work in English. It's almost always the case that when we've got AU inside a word or at the beginning of a word, we pronounce these two letters as a long O. That's, for example, why we say author or audio. Authorities. Now let's move on to our next word. And in here you might be thinking, why is this word here? It's a really basic word. Well, yes, you are right, but did you know that this is also a noun? So it's not only an adjective, it can also be used as a noun. And how would you say it? Listen and check. Calm. Calm. Any surprises? Well, lots of students would find it quite surprising that the L inside this word is silent. We don't say it. Calm. It's just a long R inside. The long R sound. Calm. We're going to apply the same pronunciation to words like calmed and calming. Calm. And finally, let's look at our last word today. And the big question is, where do you put the stress? The first or the second syllable? Where would you put it? Listen and check. Category. Category. Where is the stress? It's the first syllable that receives the emphasis, right? Lots of students are having a problem here because they are putting the stress incorrectly on the second syllable, and it doesn't work like this. You always put the stress on the first syllable in category. And speaking of the number of syllables in this word, did you notice how quickly I pronounced the ending? These last four letters are pronounced as just one syllable in British English. It's just gree. Category. Category. Learn to say this word like this, and I assure you, you will sound really, really natural when speaking English. Category. Well done. Now let's revise these words. Let's check how many of those words that we have just studied you can remember to pronounce correctly. I'm going to be showing you each word first. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think, to try to remember how to say it, and then you'll be able to listen and check and repeat. Let's start. Environment. Admire. Crew. Minus. Confirm. Private. Atmosphere. Average. Advantage. Valuable. Scientific. Performed. Authorities. Calm. Category. Well done. Did you remember most of them? Well, I hope you did, but even if you didn't, you're going to have another chance to practice them now. Let's put all of these words into sentences. Again, as always, I'll show you each sentence first, give you a few seconds to think how to say it, and then you will be able to listen and repeat. If you notice that you are still making mistakes with those words, pause the video and try to focus and repeat each word because it's a very important part of improving your pronunciation. Ready? Let's have a look at the first sentence. She admired how calmly the crew performed their tasks. Authorities confirmed private research is valuable. This scientific category has many advantages. A calm environment and positive atmosphere are key at work. The average temperature in the Arctic is about -30 degrees. Well done. Now, how did it go this time? Was it better? Did you remember more words? I hope so, and you are still going to get another opportunity to practice them. And now, let's come back to our words and let's use them in a story. This is a great exercise to practice your pronunciation in a broader context. So again, I'll be showing you each sentence in the story separately so that you can have time and think how you would say it, and then you will be able to listen and check and focus on those words where you are still making pronunciation mistakes. Try to get it as close to correct pronunciation as you can. So, headphones on and read with me. Let's start. I've always admired people who risk their lives for science. Just this morning I saw a news report that looked at dangers of research in extreme environments like the Arctic. It's really impressive because as there is generally little money for this category of research, scientists tend to work in small crews and dangerous conditions. Research in the Arctic, for instance, involves working in conditions that are often below 30 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, on average, 10 scientists are confirmed dead every year on such expeditions because of accidents, weather, or incorrect data. Another factor in this context is the funding. Money for these expeditions doesn't often come from the authorities, but rather from private sponsors. This often means that scientists have to work under pressure. This stressful atmosphere and lack of calm can sometimes lead to tragic errors. Despite the risks, however, research in extreme conditions has its advantages and has led to valuable discoveries. Scientific work performed in polar regions, deep oceans, and at high altitudes has led to medical advances, a better understanding of ecosystems, and clearer data on global warming. These findings benefit all of us, and that's why this kind of research doesn't only deserve recognition, but also strong public support. Well done! How did it go? Can you remember most of the words we have studied today? I definitely hope so. Come back to this video from time to time to check if you can still remember the words we have practiced. And if you have any more energy for more pronunciation, check out one of these two videos and I'll see you right there. And for now, take care, keep learning, and enjoy the process. Thank you very much for watching.